Hi, everyone, and whoops, just going to agree the meeting's being recorded. And my name is Brandt Hutzel, and I am the Technology and Engineering Education Content Advisor at PDE. I'm fairly new to this position. It's been just over a year that I've been in the position, and 6 months of that has basically been spent on my computer on Zoom, so which is unfortunate because I love being out in districts and seeing teachers and seeing kids again. I was a 19-year tech ed teacher, primarily when I started in Pine Richland in Pittsburgh, and then moved back home to the Johnstown area and taught at Richland for 11 years and had some experience actually in a private school for 1 year. I also have experience working as a welder in Johnstown, building rail cars, building mine conveyors, and also working construction and things like that also. So kind of a multifaceted career until I found myself and actually went back to college for tech ed. So so far, or well, actually for today, I just have a brief slide deck that I'll share, and a lot of it's going to be what you've experienced. So I'm just going to kind of breeze past that. And I'd really like to hear from you, as I've heard from a lot of the other tech ed teachers across the state on some of your challenges you're having. And if I've heard of something to help you out, I would really like to share that with you. And also through a lot of these other sessions that I've done through 4IUs, just the dialogue between the teachers that were on the call, they were able to say, hey, I've found this resource. And we all know that this is all changing too. A lot of the resources that were available to tech ed teachers or all teachers when all of this started, they were free, and then they kind of moved to charging again, so which has been a little bit tough. So, okay, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. Hi, William. There we go. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. All right, and please stop me at any time. This is all, like I said, the beginning was just kind of some discussion points. If anyone, I'm sorry. Oh, somebody's in the background, I think. So my email address is right there. If anyone needs to contact me at any time, please do. And please invite me out to your districts whenever we get back. I would love to come out and see the wonderful things you're doing with kids. All right, just for about 10 or 15 minutes, just a brief overview of current challenges faced by technology and engineering education educators in different learning environments, and also share the resources that which are kind of big resource areas that I can share with you, which you may or may not have seen, and then just some open discussion at the end. As you all know, in March, teachers were called upon to pivot to remote instruction, and the technology and engineering education teachers faced delivering instruction at times without any access to equipment and resources. Could be materials, tools and machines, and things like that. And then in August and September of 2020, schools reopened, some of them, and the technology and engineering education teachers were challenged to deliver instruction in remote, hybrid, and also face-to-face learning environments, which created more of a challenge. But from what I've seen, and just while I was teaching, I wasn't able to experience anything like this, and seeing the amazing things that people in our field were able to do in a short amount of time was just unbelievable. And the experiences they offered their students in a short period of time were just incredible. As we all know, remote instruction, when it first took place, you had limited or no access to equipment and resources used before the pandemic for both the instructor and the students. Several of my close friends, and also just through speaking to other tech ed teachers, some of the teachers were able to go into classrooms, and whether they were CAD courses or 3D parametric modeling, or in some cases, the students were actually working on things related to COVID-19. A lot of you probably have seen students were many times designing masks or different types of protection. And some of the teachers that I know were actually permitted to go in and either use their equipment or bring their equipment home to actually make some of the things the students were designing, which was really incredible. And the tech ed teachers also were modifying the delivery of technology and engineering learning experiences that were primarily before hands-on, which was really, really tough for the teachers. Hybrid, many variations of hybrid. Students, once again, may or may not have access to equipment and resources. And many of the teachers that I've been talking to are trying to teach two groups of students. You have your hybrid students that are at home or in class at different times, and also the students that were in person. So this was a very big challenge for tech ed teachers also, trying to deliver instruction or work with kids that were at home, and also supervise and work with their students that they had in class. And once again, we were modifying our activities and changing things to online. And also the hybrid versus face-to-face students, a big challenge was they may be receiving varying instruction. So teachers I spoke to also were unfortunately having to do different things with their kids, whether they were at home or in class, but we just don't have access to a lot of the equipment and resources that we have when we are in class. Face-to-face instruction, once again, may or may not have access to equipment and resources. Teaching two groups of kids, synchronous or asynchronous, face-to-face and hybrid. And during face-to-face, social distancing became of course, it became a concern as we returned back to school. And sanitation and lab settings was very, very important. And I heard, I've talked to many tech ed teachers that were dealing with this in a lot of different creative ways. And also during face-to-face with hybrid versus face-to-face students, and they may be receiving varying instruction or experiences again. Some of the big resources that I've been making use of and sharing as much as possible were the resources that the International Technology and Engineering Educators Association put together, ITEEA, and they have a wide variety of still free, and you don't have to be a member of ITEEA, but these resources, and I'm going to click on this tab, and hopefully it'll continue to share my screen. Oh, it's probably going to go away though. Are you seeing this screen? Can you see my screen with the ITEEA website? Yes.
No.
No. Keith, can you see it? You still see a PowerPoint?
Yeah,
you
it's
see
still
your
a
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
All right, I'm gonna have to share this one, I think.
There you go.
Okay, so they have a ton of resources here, and they haven't been great at keeping up with which ones are free and which ones are now asking for some type of, if there's some type of cost associated with it. But they have 5 pages of 10 per page of lists of resources here, which are anywhere from more hands-on type of learning that you could do with your kids, but also some things that they may need something at home, which we all have to deal with that type of challenge. Going back to, I think I might just stay with this. Go back to share. The other resource is the Technology and Engineering Education Association of Pennsylvania, TEEP, which some of you may be members. They had a joint collaboration between the New Jersey Technology and Engineering Education Association, where they had teachers submit activities or different lessons to do with kids. And there is a ton of resources in there also, which are really, really great, and a wide variety, anything you can imagine, from video production, photography, to more hands-on manufacturing, woods classes or woods resources. So it's free, and all the resources are linked to a Google Drive folder that you can access. So, and I'll make sure I share these with Rebecca, and I have the majority, and I'll ask Rebecca actually at the end of this call to send me all your email addresses, and I'll send out these resources to you as well. The PDE resources that I have listed here, I've been pretty good at keeping up to date on what has changed as far as what's free and what's not free. And there were resources here, really K through 12, for both for technology, for tech ed, technology and engineering, and also there were a lot of STEM resources. The other resource that I think is really outstanding, and some of you may have heard of Idea Garden. It's also run by ITEEA. And before, in the past, Idea Garden, you had to be a member of ITEEA in order to access Idea Garden. Now you just have to register on their site, or you just set up a login, and there's a listing archive of a lot of the resources that the teachers share, but you can also go on and type in, I'm looking for a resource for my robotics class, for whatever you're looking for. And people from all over the country or all over the world will respond and say, hey, I found this. So they're always sharing resources. It's a great thing to sign up for. You can also just go in yourself and check out what the archives show. And also, the PA STEM Toolkit has many resources that you can access that may or may not be something that you can really use with kids, whether they're at home or whether they're, or whether they're in class, or kind of a combination of the two. So those are really the big ones, and I'm not going to click on all those links because it'll just take me forever to end up sharing that again. So, okay, go back to, oops. It's closing on me here. Just some open discussion questions. With those of you on the call, what challenges have you or are you facing in your technology and engineering education or tech ed classes so far this year?
Well, I'm going to jump right in. Sorry if I'm jumping on anybody else's toes, but this is something I discussed with my principal. How do I teach science, especially now that next Thursday, as I mentioned, we're going back to full time with 5 days a week for all students. So we're not going to be social distancing, but they still have to sit in a row like 3 feet away from each other, and they can't work together, and they can't use common materials. So they can't all use this. They can't use the same spring scale. They can't use the same, Sphero droid robot. So they all have their own iPad, but how do I teach? Like the collaboration is going to suffer, and then because we don't have 25 of every utensil in the classroom, that's going to be a little bit rough too. So that's what I'm struggling with so far here early. Like this week we're going over metric tools, but we only have 12 triple beam balances for, it's rough. It's definitely a new normal.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the tech ed teachers that I've been talking to saying, how are they going to, if they're in the lab, where are the kids, the social distancing as far as being on separate ends of lab tables, but how many lab tables do they have? And then so some of the teachers were trying to, which is incredible, but they also had students at home or that they were trying to work with also. And how do they split the class up to where half the kids are using the equipment they have, or were they able to, some of them modified their actual activities that they were working on and purchased other equipment that would only be assigned to actually that student. And it's just, I miss teaching, but I don't know if I miss teaching that much during this. So yeah, and it's just something like Spheros or other equipment like that that really has a high price tag, and you can just afford to purchase equipment for the students that you have and not have them all have their own, which if it's going to be collaborative anyway, that doesn't really serve the purpose. They're going to end up working on it on their own. So does anybody else have any, well, now there are only 3 of us on the call now?
No, there's
more.
8 of us.
There is. Never mind. I see you now. Okay. There
Yeah.
you go.
Please, this is our first after hours of PDE. Lucky you. No, I'm just kidding. But this is very informal. So please feel free to share. Just this is our first time as a region that this content area has come together. So please share. I don't want to put Brandt right on the spot and say he's the expert because he's never been through it either. So please feel free to share.
Matt, were you talking? There you are.
Yeah, so I'll weigh in here quick. My name is Matt Fisher. I'm the Career and Tech Ed Director at Williamsport High School. I'd like to just give a shout out to Bill Reichert, who's in on the meeting today here. Good to see you, Bill. I think some of the things that Keith mentioned are things that we're all dealing with at just different levels. So in our programs, as he said, there are times where we have machines or limited machines where we're really sharing is the only option that we have if we're going to use that. And there's some other things where it's a little easier to do that because of cost. But to be candid, we have a few $50,000 machines that it's just not practical or feasible for us to replicate those 12 or 25 times or any of those things. So we've really tried to take a critical look at how we use sanitization processes, with students coming into the lab before they touch equipment, after they're done touching equipment. Where possible, we use some different wipes to try to sanitize like touch screens and things of that nature. Some cases we use gloves depending on the program, but I don't know. I struggle with this. I think we try and weigh a lot of things out. But I don't think it's really practical in a lot of our settings to have exclusive one-to-one tools and some of those things. So I don't know if that's the right answer or the wrong answer, but to be candid, we're kind of using a blended approach across the spectrum. And there's times where we limit sharing to the greatest degree that we can. And there's some other times where we really rely on sanitization processes to allow kids to access technology that we can't come up with another way right now for them to get access to.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, especially in the spring, I heard from a lot of teachers that were making use of simulations, especially whether it was, and I've never used a welding simulation. I was a welder, but it's definitely not the same. But what can you do with kids that is pretty close to what they would be doing, and it's still not. It's not. It never will be exactly the same. But other teachers that were working with CNC equipment, there were a lot of the vendors that were offering some of their services for free, which was great. But then that once over the summer, they all moved to, wanting to get money for everything, of course. But so a lot of those simulations, they do have value. And I think I used them as when I was teaching, especially being able to use the simulation and show them, in the real world, we may not be able to make this first, just like they do in the real world. They run simulations first, and it was a great thing to do while teaching. But once again, that it doesn't work for everything, but it is out there. There are a lot of simulations.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, we've definitely done some of those things where it fits. And we're certainly better prepared here in October than what we were in May to offer some of those simulations. And there's some other things that we're doing, like from a lab environment, depending on how critical that skill is. We have instructors that maybe use an iPad that video them performing a part of the lab that would have been collaborative in the past. We share that video to them through Schoology, and then they take that, what they have in that lab video, and they use that to complete the rest of the lab or the rest of the experience.
It's outstanding. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else want to chime in? Did everybody, what was it? How many tech ed teachers are on the call? Are there, Keith, you teach science?
Yeah,
Bill,
it's eighth grade science. Bill's tech ed.
Okay.
Mhm.
Was anybody teaching in a really kind of a more traditional, like wood shop or anything like that had to pivot?
No, I'm teaching in a computer lab right now. And how I got around that one hurdle last week with sharing of equipment was I just ran around the classroom like a maniac, moving a multimeter from one student to the next, and offered them a sanitation wipe in between use. Oops, my lights went off there. Hold on. And amazingly, it worked pretty well. You know, it's definitely slows down the pace of instruction to a crawl, literally, the amount of material that you can cover, and you just have to accept that. And then sometimes I think that's not just a bad thing to reinforce the fundamentals and keep it simple.
Right. I said, I think that all teachers during all this, I mean, what they were able to do, and a lot of them did not have any experience with, using a lot of the, whether it's Zoom or doing anything like that with students. It was really amazing to see what they were able to do, but also, especially in our field or in science fields, the pivot that those teachers did was just incredible. And really some teachers, they were more challenged than others, of course, but it was just an amazing time. It was challenging for everyone, but it was just great to see. Anyone else want to share any great resource or challenges you had, or?
I know some people were talking to me about like the partnerships and the experiences. I know with our script work, it's computer science, but we talked a lot about like the partnerships and community members. And I just want to remind you guys that we have a lot of community partners that are still willing, even if they can't come in face to face, that they could do some virtual Skype ins or a Zoom or a Meet. I think that can also be a great exposure. Tonight we have the manufacturing night with 130 participants right now, which is amazing. But just to get them maybe work on some of those partnerships might also be beneficial too right now, and how they've dealt with the pandemic too.
Yeah, I think this is teachers are looking to. I was always looking for where we could go, whether it was some type of field trip or something like that. And now so many more people are open to, virtual field trips. And that really allows you not only just in your community or where you could take kids, but now it really opens up, everywhere. Where can you take your kids virtually? And that experience, and I think a lot of those, whether they were manufacturing or other industries like that or other facilities, they're really receptive now to doing something like that. So virtual field trips are great. Just amazing. I'm just shocked and amazed at what teachers were able to do, though. It's really incredible.
Awesome.
I was just going to say, one of the kind of interesting situations that we had in an intro to engineering class, which is an elective. And so, it's just whatever kids kind of want to take it. But because we're on a hybrid schedule, the teacher of the class ended up with, on certain days for that section of the class, they only had one student in the class.
Oh, wow.
But yet on the opposite days, he had a class filled with, I don't know, maybe 10 kids. So he really had to kind of change his instruction, because kind of the whole group instruction that he was doing with the kids on, whatever the A days, didn't really seem to work well when it's just one student. So he kind of individualized it for the student, and, is almost treating that class as an independent study with that one student. And I think it's working really well. And I think the student is probably getting more out of that class than he would have, had it been in the, kind of a traditional year. So I think that's something that I always kind of go back to, is how do we use this as an opportunity to kind of individualize some of our instruction? And, because we're sometimes forced to, because we can't share materials or things, but, what that can look like. So if normally I'd have a science class of kids all doing the same lab, maybe that means that, we're not doing the same lab and we're doing different labs, and then we get to share our different experiences,
That's great. It is really great. Yeah, it's so different for everyone. Everyone's doing, so that's really great to hear, though. I have a couple of my close friends. They're kind of in the same boat where they had just a single student or a couple students, and they were really having to modify. But they have both said the same thing that you said, Rachel, that those kids they're getting a lot more than what they would have got, with the whole class. So that's great, though.
Awesome. Well, I want to respect everyone's time here. What we're doing at the IU here is we will be putting a webpage together called After Hours with PDE, and I will email this out to all of you. We'll put the recording up and the presentation and all the resources there. We are scheduled from now until the end of January with PDE, which is amazing. We are actually have a bye week next week, but the next week is math. But after that, we're scheduled out. So we want to thank you for your time, Brandt, and meeting with our region. And I'm going to